Star Trek Enterprise's 4 seasons ranked worst to best. Star Trek Enterprise ended before its time. Enterprise began airing in 2001, with the first episode coming out a few months after Star Trek Voyager's finale. Because Enterprise was set 100 before Star Trek, the original series, and a decade before the United Federation of Planets was founded, Enterprise could tell stories of early space exploration that would be impossible in any other Star Trek series. Indeed, the best parts of Star Trek Enterprise happen when Captain Jonathan Archer Scott Bakula is forced to grapple with strange new worlds without the support of Starfleet, which is taken for granted in the rest of Star Trek. While Star Trek Enterprise could have been able to sustain several more seasons, United Paramount Network UPN canceled Enterprise after Season 4. Although ratings for Enterprise were strong in Season 1, they dipped in Season 2, and creative changes in Season 3 were not enough to raise ratings. For Star Trek Enterprise Season 4, Manny Coto was brought in to replace Brannon Braga as showrunner, but ultimately it wasn't enough. Nevertheless, there is a lot to love in the existing 4 seasons of Enterprise, along with some details that can justify the lower ratings. Season 3 is the worst season of Star Trek Enterprise. After ratings fell in Season 2, Enterprise Season 3 was reworked to focus on a more serialized narrative and the existential threat of the Xindi in order to raise ratings and broaden appeal, but it didn't quite work. Enterprise Season 2 ended on a cliffhanger after a Xindi superweapon killed 7 million people on Earth, and Season 3 was dedicated to the search for the Xindi primary weapon. So Star Trek Enterprise Season 3 was dominated by a single story arc. Star Trek Enterprise Season 3 took on a much darker tone than previous seasons. While shows like Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek Voyager were no strangers to showing the darker side of Star Trek, Enterprise Season 3 hit differently. For one, DS9 and Voyager still had other, lighter episodes to break up the overall tone of the darkest seasons of the shows. Since the Xindi weapon hunt was the only arc in Enterprise Season 3 meant that, if viewers grew bored of the Xindi storyline, there was nothing else interesting to tune in for. Captain Archer never faces real consequences for actions that would be war crimes in other Star Trek shows. But perhaps the most important reason Enterprise Season 3 fell flat was the way the narrative treated Captain Archer. Because Enterprise is set before the founding of the Federation, Captain Archer and the Enterprise were operating with very little oversight. In the episode Damage, for example, Captain Archer steals a warp core, stranding another ship in a dangerous region of space. Episodes like that are compelling on their own, but the fact that Enterprise's Captain Jonathan Archer never faces real consequences for actions that would be war crimes in other Star Trek shows makes Season 3 disappointing as a whole. Star Trek Enterprise may have taken a while to find its footing, but its legacy has grown stronger over time. Though it only lasted 4 seasons, the series, a prequel to the original series, offered unique insights into Starfleet's early years, Jonathan Archer's groundbreaking command, and the fragile birth of the Federation. Not every season hit warp speed, but as the show evolved, so did its confidence, storytelling depth, and thematic focus. Here's a ranking of all 4 seasons of Star Trek Enterprise, from its most turbulent flights to its most boldly charted adventures. 4. Season 1, A Cautious First Step. The debut season of Enterprise was a mixed bag. As the newest addition to the franchise in 2001, the series had a lot to live up to. It attempted to ground the Star Trek mythos in a pre-Federation, post-First Contact world, a bold but difficult direction. Captain Archer's crew felt less experienced than previous Starfleet officers, and that was by design. However, this inexperience often came across as indecisiveness or blandness. Season 1 was focused on exploration and laid the groundwork for humanity's early relations with species like the Vulcans, Andorians, and Klingons. But the pacing was often slow, and early episodes like Terra Nova and Fortunate Son lacked the spark of earlier Trek shows. Even the temporal Cold War arc, a central piece of the series' narrative, was murky and confusing from the outset. That said, there were some gems. Dear Doctor showed the ethical dilemmas of early space travel, and Shuttlepod 1 was a solid bottle episode with tension and character work. The introduction of Shran, played brilliantly by Jeffrey Combs, also provided some much-needed energy and foreshadowed stronger Andorian storylines to come. Season verdict: cautious and inconsistent with occasional promise. 3. Season 2, struggling to maintain course. Season 2 didn't dramatically change Enterprise's formula, and that was both its strength and weakness. On one hand, it improved production values, gave more screen time to fan-favorite side characters, and deepened the relationships among the crew. On the other, it continued to suffer from uneven writing and a reliance on standalone episodes that felt disconnected from a greater purpose. Episodes like Carbon Creek, a Vulcan-centric flashback, and Cogenitor, which tackled issues of gender identity and ethical boundaries, were highlights. The Expanse, the season finale, finally gave the show a clear direction by introducing the Xindi threat, kickstarting a serialized arc that would define the next season. The temporal Cold War continued to underwhelm, but arcs with the Vulcans and Andorians showed signs of greater complexity. Despite these improvements, much of Season 2 felt like it was treading water, unsure of how to build momentum. Season verdict: solid character work and a strong finish, but largely forgettable in the middle. 2. Season 4, a love letter to Star Trek. Season 4 of Enterprise is arguably its most Star Trek-centric outing, guided by new showrunner Manny Coto. Freed from the Xindi arc, the series returned to episodic storytelling, but this time, it leaned heavily into multi-episode arcs that tied directly into classic Trek lore. From the thrilling 3-part Babel 1 arc, which explained the founding alliance of the Federation species, to The Forge and its exploration of Vulcan mysticism and politics, Season 4 was packed with rich world-building and fan service that worked. It expanded on canon, often enhancing the mythology of the franchise rather than merely referencing it. The controversial finale, These Are the Voyages, drew criticism for reducing the Enterprise crew to a holodeck simulation within the next generation. But even this misstep couldn't undo the goodwill built by episodes like In a Mirror Darkly, a brilliantly executed, campy, and compelling dive into the mirror universe. If there was a flaw, it was that Season 4 sometimes felt too much like it was catering solely to longtime fans. While this deep dive approach was a treat for Trekkies, casual viewers might have found it a bit dense. Still, in terms of execution and tone, this season was the series at its most confident. Season verdict: a canon-rich triumph that reconnected Enterprise with the spirit of Star Trek. 1. Season 3, a bold reinvention. Season 3 is Enterprise's most daring and creatively ambitious season. It ditched the largely episodic format of the previous 2 years in favor of a serialized arc, the Xindi conflict. After Earth is attacked in the Season 2 finale, Archer's mission becomes a matter of survival and diplomacy as the Enterprise journeys through the Delphic Expanse to stop the Xindi superweapon. This arc allowed for deeper character development, particularly for Archer, who became a more morally complex figure, willing to bend, and occasionally break, Starfleet principles to save his planet. Trip Tucker's grief over his sister's death gave his character an emotional weight not previously seen, and T'Pol's increasing conflict between Vulcan logic and human emotion was explored more intimately. Episodes like Azadi Prime, Damage, and